thing shows up on. All right, good evening and happy Monday, everyone. We hope that you're staying safe wherever you may be during COVID-19. It's the first day of the week and we're back with Corey Hiramoto, a Fortune 500 recruiter who's been with us doing mock interviews for the past 6 months. He needs no introduction at this point and is the founder of CareerShakers.com, a career consultancy company. Today we have with us Millie Dazan. She's the thriving leader in the social services sector, serving the needs of the disabled and mentally challenged adults as president of Millicent R. Dazan for the past 12 years. Prior to this, Millie worked in accounting and finance for companies such as Ernst & Young, Helm Financial, and Robert Half International. Millie is passionate about women's leadership and elevating the experience of women leaders in varying industries. You can connect with her at millicentrose.com. The rules are pretty simple for this. Millie has provided a job that she wants to apply for, and we're going to be using her LinkedIn as a resume today. Corey will ask the questions, and you as the audience get to root her on and ask your own questions as well. Corey, welcome back.
Thank you, Albert, and thank you, Millie, for volunteering. Really do appreciate it. So this week's episode is going to be a little bit different than our normal mock interview sessions. So what we thought would be super helpful is if we were framing this in the minds of a recent college graduate who is looking to get a audit associate, or basically entry-level accounting role at like a Big Four company or a regional firm like Grant Thornton. So Millie is actually going to be pretending to be a recent college graduate or a soon-to-be college graduate from an accounting program interested in a entry-level accounting role. She has significantly much more experience than that, as you can hear from Albert's awesome introduction. So we'll be pretending and role-playing in that scenario. So for folks who are looking for entry-level accounting roles, accounting associate, etc. These would be very, very helpful and relevant questions. And I myself actually interviewed for the same position before entering management consulting. So I'm actually going to be using the exact questions that I was asked during my interviews with KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, Grant Thornton, etc. So you will be getting the questions that I was asked. It was a few years ago, so I don't necessarily believe it'll probably be the exact same questions, but hopefully everybody can get some value out of this as well. And then if you guys do want additional tips and tricks, I have a YouTube page. It's just Career Shakers on YouTube. I've got resume, LinkedIn, interview prep materials, and then I'll be uploading actually a video on LinkedIn this week because I got some questions about how to make sure that you have a really good LinkedIn. So yeah, I'll be adding a video for that. Now, can get back over to Millie. Thank you so much for volunteering and role-playing with us tonight for everybody's benefit and learning. I guess, yeah, why don't you give a quick introduction of yourself, or if you have any plugs for your work.
Hi everyone, my name is Millie. I am most recently a career and communications coach. I'm very passionate about women's leadership and elevating the experience of women leaders in varying industries. I think it's very important to see ourselves as leaders, and building executive presence is my mission. You can visit me at www.millicentrose.com.
Wonderful, so succinct. So yes, if any of you are women leaders in the space and are looking for an awesome coach and partner, please do contact Millie. Alrighty, so we will begin and dive into our practice session today. As a quick reminder, again, we will not be doing a lot of references like I normally do to folks. Like I try to ask questions based around each person's individual resume and their background, and then have them tie it to the role like you would do in a real interview. Given the fact that Millie will be role playing today, you will notice that I am not going to be asking a lot of questions about her specific experience, just because on her LinkedIn, it doesn't quite match what the job description is looking for. So, alrighty, so let's get into the first question. And I guess if there is someone, I guess, whose background noise is that? Is that mine or is that Millie's?
It's not
or is that
mine.
Someone else's? Okay. Yeah, if you are joining the Zoom call, just make sure you do put yourself on mute. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Alrighty, so the very first question that I always got in all of my accounting interviews with the Big Four, is Millie, walk me through your resume, or in this case, your LinkedIn.
Hi everyone, my name is Millie. I graduated from Cal State East Bay, and on my resume, I have been the president of Beta Alpha Psi and the Accounting Association. I have not had real world experience in an accounting or finance capacity. However, I am well versed in creating networking events for finance professionals. I have volunteered doing tax preparation. I've also done a lot of mentoring for fellow undergrads who are really hesitant in the interviewing process. And these individuals are usually not native English speakers. So my role was to, make sure that they can see their value despite English not being their primary language. And a success story that I can share is I mentored 3 non-native English speakers while I was president of Beta Alpha Psi and the Accounting Association, and they all got job offers, and I'm so proud to be part of their process.
Amazing. I love that story, actually. Well done. You're hired. You're instantly hired. Okay, so the things that I really like about this answer that everybody can just take and apply to any type of walk me through your resume type question. Millie focused on things that were not highly relevant, or I guess highly evident in her resume, or in this case, her LinkedIn, which is the point of the question. You should not be repeating things that are already easy to identify on your resume. This is like your 30 to 1.5 minute pitch of yourself. And so really make sure you take advantage of that by not repeating things that they already know from your resume. Second, she had a very good story to tell. I think stories are always very powerful, and they do a much better job of showing rather than telling. And she was very strategic in what she chose to talk about. She mentioned that she was president of the Accounting Association and this other, I think is that a business fraternity, or is that?
Yes, it's a business fraternity.
Perfect.
It's a business accounting fraternity.
Yeah, and then she also mentioned how she was able to get real world experience helping with tax preparation, which is great for accounting. And then she also talked about how she was able to mentor folks, which is a huge component of leadership that all companies will be valuing in any incoming associate. So she did a really beautiful job there. And then the story was quite powerful. And it's also very good that she talked about mentoring, especially in accounting. The reason why that's even more impressive is because it demonstrates her knowledge of accounting and technical skill set, right? Because clearly if she was not good at accounting, she would not be able to teach other people, let alone if they don't speak English as their first language. So that's why I really loved everything about her answer. It was perfect. So if anybody wants to model that for your own interviews, that would be awesome. Cool. Alrighty. So the next question that I typically got in my interviews is, so Millie, what do you like about accounting? Why do you want to be an accountant?
I love accounting because it's rule-based. So if you are well versed in the rules, the principles of accounting, and you know the foundational rules, then you will thrive. You'll thrive because accounting is not for everyone. And if you have the wherewithal, the intellectual capacity to understand the rules and understanding the role that you will get into, you can quickly apply theory into practice. So I love accounting because there's no guesswork unless you're doing some high level type of decision making. But I like it because it's black and white, frankly.
Great. Yes, you sound like you would be a great accountant. Definitely black and white. Debits must equal credits, as they say. So, and then the follow-up question would normally be, if this was a regular interview, it'd be like, why are you excited about working at Grant Thornton? Probably not a fair question to ask Millie because she's not genuinely excited about being an audit associate at Grant Thornton. But make sure you guys have a great answer for that question as well. There's typically a why do you want this job, followed by why do you want to work here? So make sure that you have buttoned up answers for both of those.
During our networking events, I spoke with all of the different Big Four firms. I also spoke with the regional firms. And the firm that stood out in my mind, based on the representative that was there, was from Grant Thornton. So I asked him about the culture. I asked him about how he personally liked his job. I asked him, what was the difference between a regional firm and a Big Four firm? And his answer sold me. So I would really love to work for your firm if given the opportunity.
Perfect. Love it. And so one thing that's a good takeaway from there is that it wasn't about Millie, right? Some people interpret the question as like, well, what am I going to get by getting this job? Or what am I going to benefit from by working for Grant Thornton, right? She did a really good job of turning it around, just talking about like, what about the company she really likes. She also talked about her and if it was a real person, she probably like name drop them, right? Like, oh, I talked to this person at the career fair, and then she would have also been able to give like an example, right? Like, oh, he told me, this is the major difference between regional firms and bigger firms, and that is something that really resonated with me. So definitely very, very strong answer for sure. Everybody take notes. Millie is crushing it, absolutely crushing it. All right, now I can see that there's quite a few more folks in the Facebook Live. So if any of you have questions that you would like me to answer or Millie to answer, don't be shy. Go ahead and put those in the chat as well. And then same for folks who are already in the Zoom call. We want to make this as valuable for everybody. So if you have a burning question or you're wondering, oh, I wonder what the appropriate answer to this is, put it in the chat. We'd love to help you out. Okay, Millie, I'm really liking everything that I'm hearing so far. How would your classmates describe you?
My classmates would describe me as helpful and funny. When she's just being herself, I'm not naturally funny, but apparently when I'm myself, I am funny. I'm very helpful. It's important for me to have a sense of camaraderie. So I would say my classmates would say I am helpful and funny.
Awesome. Do you have an example of a project you did where you were able to demonstrate how helpful you were?
Well, yes. So I was actually an intern for Ernst & Young, and these were not my classmates, they were more my cohorts. And we had this intern leadership project. We had to create this presentation and do research. And I'm really good at writing, I'm really good at editing. And so the people on my team were like, oh my gosh, nobody wants to write, nobody wants to, pitch. So I did that. And I said some kind of accounting joke like a return on investment, and it joke given net return divided by initial investment is this, and they all got it because we're all accountants and everything like that. So that's not really funny for non-accounting people, but when you drop little KPIs in there or just little nuanced jokes that accounting professionals kind of pride ourselves in. They like that, but nobody else would like that.
Awesome. Very, very funny. Love it. Okay. One of the great things about her answer was she was able to incorporate some humor. If you're able to weave in or make an appropriate is the key word here, appropriate joke during your interview, it actually shows that you're extremely confident and comfortable, which is a huge thing that they look for, especially for any entry level role, right? And that's regardless of industry, accounting, finance, sales, etc. Confidence in an interview is huge. And if you have the confidence to make a joke, appropriate joke, of course, make a joke or take some type of risk, that actually does speak volumes. In terms of like the answer that Millie gave, spot on, very, very good. When you are applying for any type of role or company, just make sure you research their ethics or their values, and then try and weave those into your answer in terms of like how would your teammates or classmates describe you, and then look at their website, figure out what it is that they value and what they look for, and then try and weave that into your answer. And then of course, make sure you have some type of example prepared, because showing is much better than telling. And Millie did a really good job even going into the joke. I didn't think she was actually going to go into the joke because it's always hard to come up with one on the spot. So that was super awesome. Okay, let's just check the chat here for some questions. All right, Albert has a question for you. Millie, if you were faced with an ethical issue as an auditor, what would you do?
I would first think about what the ethical question is. I would also think about how my direct knowing of that unethical question that I have. I would ask somebody that I trusted within the firm about my concern. And then I would listen to their response because I'm not as experienced. If that individual that is in a higher role gives me a satisfactory answer, I would go ahead and do what this higher senior level individual would tell me to. If this higher senior level makes me feel uncomfortable and is pretty much asking me to do something unethical, that would be a dilemma. So I would need to go to, maybe HR and talk about this dilemma. If it is a misunderstanding on my part and there is no question of unethical behavior, I would rather know. But if it is blatantly unethical, that would be a problem. So I'm glad that this is not real.
Okay, very good. Very good. In terms of any feedback for the answer itself, I think the approach is correct. It is a hypothetical question, so laying out some type of, I guess, structure that you would follow, or like your blueprint, right? So, well, if I was faced with it with an ethical issue, it could be something like, and then you make something up, like maybe you discover that they're, incorrectly logging journal entries to inflate their revenue to meet quarterly estimates or whatever, and then you uncovered somebody who's basically cooking the books, and then you would want to figure out what your plan of action would be. And then so step one would be double checking and making sure that it is in fact some unethical accounting behavior, and I'm not making an accusation. I'm not making a wrong accusation because I misinterpreted some accounting law. Second step would be speaking with my immediate manager or superior for guidance. Step three would be validating the recommendation, and then step four is, depending on the outcome of that recommendation, I would do one of the two following tasks, right? And then you can go backwards after you set the stage like that, because now they know, okay, step one was this, step two was this, and then Millie would just go down the line, and then the interviewer would most likely interject every once in a while and be like, oh, well, tell me more about that, right? Like, if they were trying to double book revenue, what types of possible journal entries would they be doing? And then they try and test your technical accounting knowledge. And then I believe Millie said if they gave if her manager gave a satisfactory answer, she would be okay with it. So then the follow-up question in the interview would probably be like, oh, well, pause, Millie. What to you is a satisfactory answer? And then she would have to go and explain that, and then just make sure you're able to maintain your train of thought and move from step 2 to step 3 to step 4, and then you would basically conclude. Awesome. Great question. Oh yeah, actually, Albert, I had drafted up a very similar question. Okay, so Millie, what has been the most challenging part of learning accounting so far for you?
Well, learning accounting is actually pretty cut and dry. So I'm going to just flip that question. The part that is difficult for me in the accounting circles, the sphere, is managing and interacting with different people and different dynamics. There are some, my biggest issue is probably learning people's communication styles and working styles and finding a way to harmonize that, because the work itself, in my opinion, is pretty cut and dry. And I think being on the same page with my supervisors, with my managers, with my team, and being a cohesive team, I think is really important, because if you have that cohesiveness and you have that communication, there's nothing really that's hard. You just make it hard. So that's a lot.
Okay. So one of the appropriate approaches to answer this question is not choosing something that's highly relevant for the role. So for example, if Millie had said, "Oh, well, the most challenging part for me is cost accounting. I got a C in that class. It was really, really hard. But I studied, really, really hard for the final, and then I ended up getting like a C plus because I got a B minus on the final instead." Like that would be an example of a bad answer. Like, yes, you did show him or show the interviewer, me in this case, that you are able to, study hard and do well on a final, but it also shows them that you're possibly not the greatest person for cost accounting. So I wouldn't pick something super relevant and technical for the role, which Millie did not. She actually chose something that would not be required of an associate to be successful, which in her case was more like client management, which you probably wouldn't really be required to do until at least you're a senior associate, sometimes manager. And so if you were to say that that's like the most difficult part for you, that's actually a very good thing because to them, that's coachable. Right. And then, of course, you would need to demonstrate how you would be working on improving that client management piece or working within a team. And then you would talk about like some group project you did at school where you wanted to, make sure that everybody was happy and you were kind of like the leader of the project. And then you got an A. That would be like the best type of example to share. Cool. All right, we've run through a lot of questions so far. We're going rapid fire. Millie, how is this feeling for you? Going back down memory lane.
Fun. This is fun. I do this type of thing all the time. So with my clients, with people that I work with. So this is really fun. I like
Awesome.
answering questions. I usually ask the question, so it's weird being
On the other side.
Yeah, it is.
I totally get it. That's how Albert and I felt when I had Albert interview me for a senior recruiting role, and then the following week I interviewed Albert. So yeah, it's definitely takes some time getting used to. And I guess this should also be like a really good, I guess, perspective for folks who are either in accounting and finance right now or are thinking about getting into accounting and finance. So you were in accounting and finance for, I think, like the first 5 years of your career or so,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So why did you decide to switch out of accounting?
Is this a politically correct answer, or is this like a?
Oh no, this is not an interview because like. I mean,
Okay. Oh, the real answer.
yeah, yeah.
The real answer is that after 5 years, I noticed that my quality of life never really improved, even though the bottom line of what I was getting paid was improving. I was not able to focus on things that were important to me outside of work, and that was a problem.
Hmm.
Quality of life is important, but you have to define what that means, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a good wife, I wanted to be a good mom that was present and that had time, and I was not able to see that reality in the industry that I started my professional career in.
Okay. Very good perspective for everybody to maintain, not just for accounting and finance, right? But in your job in general, just make sure that you do have that appropriate quality of life, and success to everybody means different things. And so if you feel like you're not able to accomplish those things personally or professionally, then it may be time to consider a job change.
Yep.
And if you need help with that, let me or Millie know. Cool. All right, so let's get back into the interview questions here. Millie, what would you say is your greatest strength?
My greatest strength is my ability to connect with a whole spectrum of different individuals. I can connect with individuals who are very detail oriented, like us accounting professionals, business professionals. We're very detail oriented. We're not really interested in emotions or anything that's like super fluffy, because the way our brains work is very a lot of times black and white. So that's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum is that I have a lot of compassion for people who are not like me, people who have, challenges that might be interpreted as weak, like maybe, maybe they have a developmental disability or a mental health diagnosis. I don't see that as a weakness. I see that as a difference, and I'm always trying to connect on an authentic, in an authentic manner, and because I really enjoy people. From a heart-centered place, because I think everybody is gifted in their own way, and I like meeting and working with all different kinds of people.
Okay. So I think if I'm going to play back, your strength is that you are able to work with different types of people who fall on both ends of that spectrum.
Yes. So I think but that was long-winded on there. Connecting with people is my strength. Connecting in meaningful ways, and connecting means communicating to me. So I think that's my strength.
Okay. And then, do you have an example of a time when you were able to connect and communicate with folks who are on both sides of the spectrum?
Yeah, so on one end of the spectrum, I was working with this individual who was very high achieving, has the capability to hold a C-level position. People who are that driven, people who are that accomplished, a lot of times their behavior might be interpreted as arrogant. But I actually saw the whole person, and it's actually not even arrogance. There's a strong sense of a lack of confidence in certain things and trying to be perfect. And so when I kind of met them at that point, they kind of softened up and didn't take themselves so seriously. High accomplishing individuals tend to take themselves very seriously. So learning how to soften people up and say, hey, it's not the end of the world if you don't do X, Y, Z perfectly. That's one end of the spectrum. Another end of the spectrum, is someone who has little focus. They can't focus. They are very high on the ADHD spectrum. So they have not learned how to read or write. And even talking about their inability to read and write is a trigger for them. So they want to learn how to read, they want to learn how to write. So I have to be very careful how I interact with this individual without minimizing her intellectual capacity or her inability to focus.
Okay. Got it. Very, very helpful. And I think it's one thing to note that the examples that Millie is currently sharing in this scenario is not something that a college student would obviously be sharing. Like coaching.
Yeah, sorry. Those are actually real examples, so I had to go. I couldn't make stuff up. Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys.
All right. No, I figured.
That was too fantastical to try to make stuff
up. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I just wanted to make sure that everybody who is watching and preparing for an upcoming interview doesn't think that like they need to go coach an executive, and then that's like the best type of answer to give for these questions. So yeah, you don't have to worry about that. Don't need to worry about that. And in terms of the answer for this question, like there's no wrong answer and there's no right answer. They're just looking for your delivery, your confidence, as well as a bit of humility, and then of course an example. So if you're able to do all of those things, then that would be a quote unquote good answer for that question. And then I didn't ask the what's your greatest weakness because it's very similar to the question Albert asked earlier, which is like, what do you find challenging about learning accounting? It could be applied in basically the same thing. Same process, right? Like your greatest weakness, pick something that's not related to the role, at least immediately, but that is an actual weakness. And then of course you need to show them how you're working on fixing it. So yeah, I didn't want to repeat the same structure. So we didn't go through that one. Oh, okay. FIFO, LIFO. That's funny.
FIFO.
For those of you who don't know yet, that's an accounting joke. It's an accounting joke. First in, first out. Last in, first out.
Yeah.
And I can see there's about 17 folks in the Facebook Live as well, and there's 6 folks in the Zoom chat. If you guys have questions for us, me or Millie, that you want us to answer, please put them in the chat. And also, we are looking for a volunteer for next week's mock interview session. So if you want to get a practice round of interviews in, or if you know a friend, let us know. And yeah, we'd love to have you on the show. So, Millie, can you tell me about a time when you handled a conflict and what you did to resolve it?
Yes, most recently, we had a vendor who called us and said, I don't think I think we are invoicing for the wrong amount. This is, they took out the stipulation of the contract, and I looked it over, and they were kind of yelling at me. They were upset because they thought that we were overcharging them, but it was actually what I had to do was I had to, say, I'm sorry you feel this way. I said, I think there's a misunderstanding because the stipulation that you're referring to actually doesn't have anything to do with this particular charge. And I just explained very, very calmly and succinctly that that charge that they saw didn't have a direct correlation to the stipulation that they referred to, and they were able to see that that was an overreaction to what they thought that they were getting from us as far as communication. So I think that it was very important for me not to take things personally and not to feed off of this woman's anger, frankly, right? So she was angry. People usually get angry when they think they're getting overcharged. So I just kind of I had to remember and know that this was a misunderstanding, that wasn't happening. And once I was able to calmly hear her out and explain what the situation was, everything was all good.
So the result of this, I guess, interaction is that they were able to pay the invoice on time?
They were able to pay the invoice on time, and they were able to see that they had misunderstood the communication that we had sent out, and that we were not overcharging. It was actually a service that was something outside of the contract that was additional services. So I was able to explain that.
Great. Okay. So this is a classic STAR method example. So situation, task, action, result. I only had to probe Millie on the R part, which is something that everybody needs to make sure that they hit on. One of the pitfalls of this question that I've seen in the past is that folks start talking about a conflict as a mistake that they had made, and how someone brought it up to them, or how they realized that they made a mistake and then it created some problem for the project or for the work or something like that. And Millie did a very good job actually of not picking a mistake. It was more of like a miscommunication conflict. Those are probably the best examples to give, because it doesn't show that you make mistakes, obviously, which is a good thing. And it also shows that you are able to handle difficult situations. And in any type of job, accounting, finance, sales, marketing, etc., you are going to need to be able to diffuse situations and act maturely and professionally no matter what is thrown at you, especially in a client facing role like accounting, or public accounting, especially when you work with different accountants, especially some folks at the senior level. They may sometimes pull you into meetings, accuse you of certain things, or think like you or your team did something wrong, and then you need to be able to demonstrate that you can handle that pressure and act professionally. So well done, Millie. Very, very good job. And thank you for the question, Albert. Eve, very good question, a very technical question. Um, we'll see if there's like a good, if Millie can give an answer for this. It may be a little challenging given her current skill set and what she's working on now, but we would love to give it a shot.
Sure.
Okay, Millie, can you give an example of a financial model you've built?
I don't do that. So I'm sorry, I can't. I don't do financial models. I've never been interested in building financial models. I like building businesses and building people up, but financial models is not my forte. I'm sorry. I cannot answer that question.
Honesty is very good. Yeah, if someone asks you if you can do something or have a certain skill, I think it is good to be honest and then also just talk about like, well, here's an example of a time where I learned something very, very quickly. And so if you were to hire me, I would be able to learn on the job or, before I'm hired in I think they're hiring for this role 2021, right? If you're like, oh, well, by fall 2021, I will have taken a financial modeling course and I will be able to do Black-Scholes or whatever it may be. That's like how I would approach this answer. Eve, to answer your question, like how would you normally answer this? Financial models probably would mean you're applying for like some type of investment banking or valuations, private equity type company. So they'd probably just have you talk about like some project that you did. I did like a financial modeling course my senior year. So you probably just talk about like what methodology you used. Santa Clara taught Black-Scholes, and then you basically just talk about your project and then how your approach or findings were like in any way unique or different than I guess what you were supposed to find in your actual project. Because the interesting thing about those projects, at least from my experience, was that there's no quote unquote right answer. You just have to be able to show your work and then like how you were able to come up with certain valuations and your different variables, right? And then justifying those. So that's kind of how I would approach that question. Hopefully that's helpful, Eve. Put another comment in the chat if you were looking for something else or different, and then I'll do my best to kind of give you an appropriate response. Jess has a question. Oh, okay. This is a good one. Okay. Millie, how would your former supervisor rate your performance on a scale from 1 to 10 and why?
I think my former supervisor would rate me a 9. And they would rate me a 9 because they would probably be judging my performance based on the following metrics. Number one, competence. I really strive to do my work in a thorough manner, and I ask good questions that I think are good so that I can make sure that I'm on target. So competence is number one. Number two, attitude. I am genuinely very pleasant to be around, and I have been told by supervisors that people like working with me and that I'm easy to work with. So that's number two. And then the number three metric would be being able to adjust on the fly, being able to learn quickly, not giving up. So those I think would be the top three reasons why I would get a 9. My supervisors are not keen on giving a 10 because there's no improvement for a 10. I mean, there's always improvement, but on the scale of 1 to 10, there is none.
Very good. So yeah, Jess, I would probably approach the answers very, very similar to how Millie did it. She was very good in being methodical and structured. She laid out like, well, the criteria to be a 9 would include this, and then she picked 3, which is a good number. I wouldn't go more than 3 because your answer would get too long, and then it's also hard for you to like allow the interviewer to ask follow-up questions. So I would go with like 3 criteria, basically explain your methodology as to how you arrive at your number, and then I wouldn't pick 10 just because of exactly Millie's point. You want to show that you have room for growth and improvement and that you always strive to improve and get better. So I would probably pick something between 8 and 9. And then for that criteria, just make sure you are calling out or identifying criteria that is actually highly relevant for the role itself. Millie kept it very generic, which can be applied to any type of role, but she'd probably like sprinkle something in there related to accounting that shows that she's good at accounting. So hopefully that's helpful, Jess. It is definitely a difficult question, but yeah, I would stick to something like 8 or 9, and then just make sure you have a methodology behind it and explain why you're not a 10 because you're always striving to improve. And then just be prepared for some type of example follow-up question, right? If you're like, it's because of my competence, and then, oh, really? Tell me about a time when you were able to demonstrate that you asked the appropriate questions that are smart. Oh, okay, sure, right? So, for example, I was given an accounting task to reconcile whatever cloud sales revenue for Q3, and then I didn't know how to do this step. I went to Google first to figure out if I could, figure it out myself. I opened up some of my old accounting books. I wasn't able to figure out what the solution was. So then I next realized, well, how do I appropriately frame this question for my manager so I can get the best use of their time? I don't want to just say, hey, I don't know how to do this journal entry, like teach me how to do it. I wanted to show them how far I've gotten. And then I asked very specific questions as how I should be treating certain types of accounting entries. And then they were able to give me the feedback that I need. And then turns out 2 weeks later, another person on my team ran into the exact same problem. And then I was able to actually help out my teammate and save my manager time answering the same question twice. That would be like a really good example. Cool. I only had one other question that I am typically asked, or that I was asked during my accounting interviews. Millie, tell me about the most impactful project that you've led.
The most impactful project that I've led was probably the tax professional night that I coordinated and I hosted for Beta Alpha Psi Accounting Association. This was impactful for me because I was able to prove to myself that I had the organizational skills, I had the social competence to, number one, plan, organize this event that required a lot of different professionals, a lot of different kinds of students, and bringing them all together in space that was conducive to networking, to talking, to making friends. We had it at Scott Seafood in Oakland. It was really beautiful. Everybody had a good time. I had given the students who were a little nervous, kind of prep them and kind of stage like, this is what we're going to do. You have to represent yourself in this manner, but make sure that you're authentic. And the tax professionals, I asked them, is there anything that we can provide that you would need that would make it a more enjoyable and effective event for you guys? So I took that list and made sure that the tax professionals were happy, made sure that the students were happy, and I also got some speakers who were that can speak to both audiences in a compelling manner. And so for me, that was many, many years ago, but that still shines, very bright in my mind because we were able to put on this amazing event where people had fun and networked, and lots of connections were made because it was a highly successful.
Great. It's another STAR method answer where situation, and for the situation part, that's when you have to explain why you're choosing a specific example and how it answers the question, which Millie did. And then you go through the T, the A, and then the R. And so, yeah, very, very good answer. In terms of like what you would not want to do is you would not want to talk about a project that you had to do in class. The reason being is because that would show the interviewer that you have not done any other extracurricular activities outside of just go to class. So you would just want to make sure that you pull something from your volunteer work, your leadership work, or even better, a real life project that you did, either like when you were working on campus or when you had an internship. Pull something from work. That would probably be the next best thing. So cool. Yeah, what if you didn't do anything outside of class projects? Well, depending on when your interview is coming up, I would make the most out of the next few months or semester, etc., at school, so that you can have a much more diversified portfolio. Contrary to popular beliefs, even for highly technical roles, right, like software engineering, I had a lot of friends who were civil engineers and mechanical engineers. Just because you got a 4.0 does not mean you're the best candidate for every type of job, especially given like how competitive the market is these days. And everyone kind of is on a level playing field, honestly. And so, yes, a 4.0 is great. However, they still would like to see well-rounded experience because they want someone who can demonstrate that ideally I can get a 4.0 at school and also work part-time, right? And also be the president of the accounting association, right? That would be their ideal candidate, is someone who can do multiple things and juggle multiple priorities, just like you would have to do at work. So if you don't have anything going on right now, I would say start volunteering, start thinking about applying for leadership roles for a club on campus. If you're not getting nominated, what I did my senior year, just create your own club, and then you'll be forced to be president. So that'll be great. And then in your interview, you don't just say that your club only has 2 members. Obviously, don't shoot yourself in the foot that way. Just say that I'm the president, and then make sure you do like some type of project that you can use for your interviews. I would do that. And then also just get a job on campus, honestly, or like work at a Starbucks or a coffee shop or something. Like you need to show them that you can get good grades and work at the same time. So I would try and diversify your portfolio ASAP. Oh, okay. This is a fun question. Millie, if you could do accounting in any industry, which would you choose?
You know what? I'm well versed in FASB, right? So I know FASB. I don't know GASB. I don't know governmental accounting. And from what I hear from professionals in governmental accounting, the quality of life is higher. The camaraderie, the mentoring from above is actually more robust than the financial accounting sector. So I would want to learn something totally new, just because I have heard that the quality of life for individuals in governmental accounting is better. So that's what I do.
Okay, good. This is a tricky question. For those folks who are applying for roles, if you are an associate, like you're 22 or something like that, no family obligations, no kids, etc., I would say probably don't go with like I want a job that has really good work-life balance or quality of life. Just pick another reason as to why you would want to do that. But in Millie's case, she just being honest, right? And that was and that's really important for her. But in an interview setting, I would probably not go that honest. No fault
Yeah.
to Millie, right? Obviously, this is not a job that she's currently applying for and not interested in. So just wanted to give everybody like an appropriate answer. It would probably be nothing to do with like, oh, I want, a job where I get really good work-life balance. I would pick something about an industry that you're interested in or passionate about, and then talk a little bit about how much research you've done about it or why you're so excited about working in software or biotech or pharmaceuticals, right? And then if you had some type of story on top of that, that would be even more impressive. Like, oh, I'm really interested in pharmaceuticals. Both of my parents are doctors. My mom was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, and I was so worried about her. I stayed up all night researching different types of drugs, and then I, discovered about this amazing company called blah 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 blah. And then I told my mom about it, and then my mom ended up going into remission, and she's super happy now. And so now I have this like strong desire and passion for pharmaceutical companies or something like that. That'd be like extremely powerful. Actually, so I'll take this one. I was actually asked this question. So Albert's question is, if you don't already know, accounting is known for working long hours. Are you willing to work long hours? So I actually was asked this question in a real interview, basically like, are you prepared to sign your life away? And of course your answer in the interview is yes. I would love to. I would love to work. One of the reasons why I love accounting is because blah 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 blah, right? You just talk about something like that. And when I know that I'm working on something that I'm truly passionate about and something that gets me excited, it really doesn't honestly feel like work. And so if I'm knowing that I'm working with a purpose and it's something that I love, I also get to see the benefit that my work has when we are releasing financial statements, and the CFOs of our clients get to talk very highly about us as auditors and how all of their numbers and etc. are accurate and correct. That is what really gives me joy. And so basically, no, I am not afraid to work more than is absolutely necessary. Something along those lines is like the best answer to give. And if you're working at like management consulting, investment banking, etc., you're probably going to get some form of question too, where they're just trying to see like how badly do you want this, because you do work a lot of hours. And so just have some appropriate response for that as well. Cool. Let me just check the Zoom chat. Doesn't look like there's any questions in here. Those are all the questions that I had. We actually ran through a lot of questions today. We probably did 10 or more interview questions. So thank you so much, Millie. I know how tiring and exhausting it can be. Yeah, and if anyone else has any other questions for me or for Millie, we'll open up the floor. I guess in the meantime, just do another plug for myself and my channel. Let me know what other videos you guys want to see. I've got interviewing, just general career planning. And if you are thinking about doing a career switch like Millie did, I'm sure Millie or I would love to help you. What types of accounting jobs are hot right now? Well, according to Indeed, there's not a lot actually. There's not a lot of entry-level associate accounting level roles. If anything, it would probably default back to which industries are still thriving. So e-commerce, education, HR, government, nonprofit. But even like at the associate level, though, you're just going to be relying upon your campus recruiting. Typically, the recruiting is done in the fall right now, but given COVID and everyone's kind of tight on headcount and things like that, I don't actually know if they're still doing fall recruiting right now. Maybe it's pushed to the winter. Um, but yeah, even as you can see, I typed in audit associate or accounting associate. There's not a lot of roles open. Oh, Stanford's hiring. Is accounting a recession-proof career? In general, I would say yes. No job is recession-proof. My friends who work at PwC, Deloitte, KPMG, there have been some layoffs, but for the most part, the majority of folks have been gainfully employed the entire time. It is one of the strong benefits of working in accounting or corporate finance is that no matter what happens, you guys need to produce correct financials to the street unless your company goes bankrupt. So you are probably the last department that actually gets let go. So it is definitely a huge perk and draw for working in accounting or finance. You are highly valuable. Typically, what happens if there are required cuts, they would go based on performance. So just make sure you are at least in like the top 25% every single cycle. It's good for your bonus, it's good for your raises, but even more so, it's really good for job security. But yeah, I would say it's relatively recession proof. Just because everybody needs to produce financials, no matter what happens. Accounting bonuses. Oh man. It's been a few years since I've worked at an accounting firm, but you typically get I think it's semi-annual now. Most, at least big four companies, I don't know about the regional firms, most of the big four companies, and Millie, if you know, you can correct me too. I believe most big fours give you, it's an annual bonus, but they'll pay you, I think, twice a year. Um, that way you have to basically stay the entire time if you want your whole bonus. That's their way of like making sure you come back every single year. So you're typically rated on your annual performance. You're given a rating, and then based on your rating, you would be designated a certain percentage as your bonus. And then you would typically receive 50% of that bonus like 3 months later. And then you would receive the remaining 50% of that bonus another like 6 months after that. So there's really only like a 3 month window where like you would be really want to look for a job. That's like their way of making sure that you come back every single year. And then there is a bonus if you pass your CPA. I believe like you get 5,000, you pass your CPA in the first year. It's 3,000 if you pass your second year, and then you only get like $1,000 if you pass it your third year. I do know that at the big four, you can't make manager until you pass your CPA exams. So that's also something you want to keep in mind. And then you do get a bonus if you make it to manager at the same firm that you started with. So if you start an associate and then you make it all the way to manager, I think you get like an extra 15 or 20,000 or something like that if you get promoted to manager. And then last year, I think a lot of the firms were giving retention bonuses because their turnover rate was a little bit too high. And so occasionally you will be offered a retention bonus where you'll need to stay for a certain period of time in order to receive a prorated like dollar amount. Cool. Millie, I guess any plugs for yourself? Anything you wanted to talk about?
I already talked about that in the beginning. Just here to answer any other questions, fun questions. We didn't really ask any other, behavioral type questions, right? Some, personality type questions. I think it's important to present yourself in a way that's authentic and likable, right? So you have to practice with people that will tell you the truth.
Absolutely. Practice makes perfect.
Yep.
And if you want real practice, sign up for a mock interview session next week, Monday. We'd love to have you. What type of personalities should an accountant have?
Should.
Yeah, Billy, why don't you take a stab at this one?
Okay. So I'm going to give you the politically correct answer. The politically correct answer is an accountant must be detail oriented. If you say anything that has anything to do about being the opposite of that, that's a fail. Okay. So you have to be detail oriented. You have to enjoy the detail because that is the nature of the work. So number one, detail orientation. Number two, being able to follow directions. If you're one of those types of people that you can't follow directions, written or verbal, that's a problem. So you have to be able to follow instructions, both written and verbal. And number three is you have to be able to want to be part of a team. In public accounting, it's very team-based. And if you're super shy and introverted and you just don't know what to do with yourselves with other people, that's going to be a fail too. So if I were to answer that, as honestly as possible, those are the top three. If you can be those three personality types, you should thrive. You'll be able to thrive in this profession.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think there's like a right or wrong personality to be an accountant. You can be successful no matter what your personality is. There's always like different ways to play to your strengths also. If you're more of an extroverted person, I know that accountants kind of get a bad rap that they're more introverted, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're more on the extroverted side, you'll actually thrive more at the higher levels. Because beyond senior manager, you're actually expected to sell work and projects and generate more business for the firm. So it actually is a very valuable skill set the higher up you get in accounting. And then, of course, if you're an introverted person, you would naturally probably love accounting because you don't have as much team meetings as a regular, I would guess, other type of job like finance, marketing, sales, etc. And if anything, most of your meetings are internal. So you're not working with customers all the time. So it really can suit multiple different personality types. Yeah. Cool. Albert, that's all I had.
Sounds good. I think my final question was, and this one probably is a very general career question for accountants, is do you need a CPA to be a successful accountant?
Yes. So from a hiring perspective, if you are looking to leave public accounting, make sure you get your CPA. Assuming you want to continue to do accounting, but like not at a Big Four, you're kind of unhireable without the CPA because that's really like what they're looking at you for. And also there's going to be a lot of questions as to like, okay, you still want to do accounting, but you didn't get a CPA. Like, why
Right.
did you not get a CPA? And then if your answer is, oh, I didn't pass, I mean, then that's kind of like a ding against yourself, right? It's like, well, okay, so you're not that great at accounting because you can't even get the certification that qualifies you as an accountant. So I would say, yeah, if you need to have a CPA if you're looking to leave, and of course, you need to have a CPA if you want to make manager.
Yeah. And if you don't get that CPA, you're probably just as good as being a bookkeeper for the rest of your life, huh?
Well, even those, like, like it'd be kind of hard to hire you if you didn't have a CPA, right? A lot of just bookkeepers, like tax accountants, etc. They all have CPAs. So
Yeah.
you kind of do need to get it. So
Yep.
if you are planning on staying in accounting, you should really set aside the time to pass.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Corey and Melly, for joining us. For those of you on the line watching now and when it's recorded, thank you for spending some of your Monday night, or your evening with us. If you enjoyed this event, we got a variety of events coming up that you can RSVP for. In fact, this is one of the busiest weeks we've had a while on Albert's list. Tomorrow we'll have a panel featuring recruiters from Google and Rakuten, where they'll be discovering and offering best practices and hiring trends in their area of the market. Join us for a moderated conversation and Q&A. We already have 150 RSVPs, so be sure to secure your spot. For those of you considering an escape to graduate school during these uncertain times, you'll want to join us on Wednesday as Executive Career Coach Deep Sani joins us to help you find clarity. You'll learn what you need to get into graduate school and what the right path is for you. Then we'll end the week by going over the September 2020 jobs report with Professor Dr. Riley White at the University of New Mexico. In this webinar, we'll be digging deep into the unemployment numbers, what they mean to you, and how things will look going forward. The bonus will also be previewing the US presidential election and what to expect from President Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden and their economic plans and how it relates back to your job. Finally, we've got 2 great premium events coming up with Forbes Coaches Council member Nader Mawali. He'll be joining us on October 21st to discuss advanced job search techniques. And on November 17th, he'll be here to help you put together your action plan for successful 2021. If it hasn't already hit you already, we're just a little over 2 months to next year, and I think a lot of us are probably looking forward to it, given how this year has gone. You'll find all of these events and more on Eventbrite and here on our Facebook group. Finally, everything that you need is in our community. In the week ahead, we look forward to your success stories, job postings, and advice to help drive your success. We'll see you all soon, and if you want to be on this video yourself, being interviewed next week across from Corey, on any industry that you're in with your resume and a job of your choice, send me a message. It's in the description of this, and we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.